or won't he of Biden's campaign is over. We have the answer. He is officially dropping out from the campaign. We're going to talk about all of this, what this does for the race, what this means for Kamala Harris, whether or not she is the presumptive nominee, because we have some mixed opinions about that right now as we go, and what this means for the country going forward, including some single polling versus some aggregated polling. So we have a lot to talk about with that, and it is going to be the vast majority of the program today. But in other news, Donald Trump gives a speech accepting his position as the Republican nominee for the president at the RNC, as he is supposed to do. We're going to listen to a portion of that speech. However, the speech goes on for probably about maybe an hour longer than it needed to. And that first little part of it was probably one of the more unifying Trump speeches I've ever heard, until he started talking about persecution. So we'll go over all of that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. Director Cheadle has resigned over the Trump assassination attempt. We will be talking about what happened there, how she got pushed out the door, and what happens next for the Secret Service. And if you want any indication that God is pissed, one of the first rumblings of a supervolcano over the United States has come up. Yes, Yellowstone. The Biscuit Basin has exploded, damaging the boardwalk. We'll talk about this, what this could mean going forward, and what kind of 10 plagues follow something like this. It is going to be all of this and more. So grab some friends, grab some dinner, get your people in here, because we only grow by word of mouth. And there are stars on the southern sky. Southward as you go, there is smells of moss through the trees. Down the Seven Bridges Road. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. It might be time to get the old locks cut here. I'm looking at this in my display over here, and you can see where the wings are coming back out again. And part of that is because my hair is getting long and it's naturally curly, and part of that is because it is humid as fuck out here right now. So I know we had the window open a little bit earlier, but there was some cooking going on in here as well. And yeah, the cool air outside just could not keep up. So anyway, we have got a lot to go over here today, over here on Contemporary. This is going to be a lot of Biden stuff and not a lot of other stuff here. So if you want to talk about what's going on with Biden, well, we'll be here. And we'll be talking about all of it. Reminder, if you're on Instagram, there's going to be video that is featured with this that you are not going to be able to see from the Instagram feed. The link is in my bio to go and find the YouTube stream, where you will be able to see the news article that I am reading from currently and any video that I'm showing, including audio for that. In fact, if you were to see on Instagram me showing video, you're pretty much going to see this. Yeah. Yeah, and you will see more of that video going on behind me here if you join me over on the YouTube side, or you can take your pick once you're there, because the links for the Twitch and the Rumble are both in the description. So go and check that out. But we've got a lot to go over. We got to get into it as quickly as we can. So we'll go through the shout-outs really quickly. They're really short because there are only a couple of people that I know that are active at this point. But you can go check out my friends KTZed, which is Overruled with KTZed. If you like true crime every Sunday, go check that out over on YouTube. Or, of course, the inimitable Stephen Ignoramus on the Daily Ignoramus every morning. Go check him out as well. I can attest for both of these. I was actually hanging out with Stephen Ignoramus last week for just a bit. I drove to Milwaukee special for him, and we tried to get it in the DNC, but it was like a military checkpoint at that point, and I think the odds were not in our favor that day. So go check both of them out. Feel free to chat in the live chat and get everything cranked back up, because the more you chat, the more we get promoted to the front page. And by the way, I found out looking at my analytics, your Twitch chats count towards YouTube because of the Nightbot. And speaking of the Nightbot, by the way, I fixed the Nightbot. I don't know if the effects have taken effect yet, but right before stream, I just thought about that and I said, you know what? I'm going to fix that. So if everything took hold, the caps ban is off and the emotes ban are off. I am going to put some ban phrases in there still because, well, you know, I know a lot of people like to talk about the Juden and Flat Earth, so I think we're gonna put some of those into there. But yeah, the caps one and the emotes thing should be off at this point if they've taken effect. I don't know if there's a 5-minute delay, an hour delay, or anything else like that. But I physically went in right after I set up the stream and fixed that, so we will see what happens with that. Remember, if you are modded, which I think most of you are, it's not going to affect you because you can bypass the Nightbot. But for the lay people here, that should be fixed. Alright, and speaking of the chat, let's get into here. By the way, I cannot begin to tell you how delicious Family Farm stuff is. So, it is amazing, and you should always be going and getting that. Yeah, it looks like I didn't catch the Mog on that, and I know he's not modded, so yeah, we should be able to spam emotes and everything else. The address, I don't know. We'll find out. Palm and Vong fighting over who was first and second, of course. Vong admiring my banger of a title. Yeah, I like that. We'll be listening to that song because I have that selection up, of course, as a sounder. I don't have a stream deck, so I can't just push a button and make the sounder, but I do have that as a sounder set up. Let's see. Yeah. After I heard Palm's title idea, I thought to myself, no, hey, 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 good Biden is perfect, because I know I'm going to be playing that song. Mog says, this is Matlock, right? No, we're going to get that more, because he's still going to be the president, as far as I know. We might get an announcement for that tomorrow yet, too. Mog says, Jill, I wanted Matlock. The immigrants from psycho mental institutions. Yeah, the Trump speech. Yeah, that was another part that should have been given. And I just listened to the Trump speech in its entirety right before I started gathering news. So, Mog says, oh wait, I hear a trumpet sound. No wait, it's the dumbass kid next door again, trying to get into that marching band. When we hear continuous trumpets over the skies, then we know we're basically putting our heads between our legs and kissing our asses goodbye. I don't know that song. I try to use a song lyric from something. I mean, it can go all the way back to the 70s because I enjoy 70s music, but that's what I try to use. I don't know enough hymns to use hymns. Am I live streaming the address tomorrow? I don't know what address that is, unfortunately. Yeah, no more caps ban. I took care of that. Biden is addressing the nation tomorrow. Oh, that should be good. Yeah, if I'm off work in time, yeah, I'll definitely set that up. But do remember, I work until 5:30, and he has to be done with his address in time for the early bird special. And yes, we've got the emotes coming back out here. All right, we've got news to go over here today, so we are caught up on this. Let me give a quick check-in to the Rumble side. Nobody's over on Rumble. And let's get down into this, shall we? guys will notice I'm wearing my backup headphones today, unfortunately, because, well, they're my second backup headphones. Because there's something going on with the cord on my wired ones, so I'm going to be getting a new set of wireless and a new set of wired over ears, so bear with me for this one. Alright, anyway, let's get into it, let's get started. And we're going to actually start with the deaths of the day. Of the week, I should say. Sheila Jackson Lee, long-serving Democratic Congresswoman and advocate for Black Americans, dies at 74. And when they say advocate for Black Americans, they mean advocate for redlining because they're supposed to have their own space. Remember. This is from Michelle Chen over at CNN. Sheila Jackson Lee, a longtime Democratic Congresswoman from Texas who was an outspoken advocate for Black Americans for decades, has died. She was 74. Today, with incredible grief for our loss, yet deep gratitude for the life that she shared with us, we announce the passing of U.S. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee of the 18th Congressional District of Texas, her family said in a statement on Friday. Jackson Lee announced in June that she had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. At the time, she acknowledged that the road ahead will not be easy, and she said she had faith that God will strengthen me. You're a U.S. politician. That is a name that I would not be invoking. And yes, I understand that we're about to listen to a Trump speech. Well, maybe not about to. But, you know, you might get hit by lightning or something. Jackson Lee announced in June that she had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Yeah, read that one. Her family remembered her as a fierce champion of the people, saying that she was affectionately and simply known as Congresswoman by her constituents in recognition of their near ubiquitous presence and service in their daily lives for more than 30 years. Term limits when, please. Born on January 12, 1950 in Queens, Jackson Lee was among the first women to graduate from Yale University and served as a Houston municipal judge and a city councilwoman before she was elected to represent Texas's 18th Congressional District in '94, unseating a Democratic incumbent in the primary for the Houston area seat. No, I don't want the news summarized. Fuck off, CNN. During her congressional tenure, Jackson Lee was an outspoken advocate for the progressive interests and Black Americans. She was one of the sponsors of legislation to establish Juneteenth as a national holiday, frequently spoke out against police brutality, and advocated federal legislation to prosecute police misconduct. She was widely admired among progressives for her opposition to the Iraq War, which is something that her and I share, and I'm bereft to admit to it, of course. And is a fierce critic of President Trump. Something else her and I actually share in common, but not to the level that Jackson Lee was. I am a critic of his financial position, and she is a critic of the fact that he is breathing air. She opposed the tallying of electoral votes, certifying Trump as the winner of the 2016 election, which I'm reliably informed is an insurrection, citing an unfounded claim about massive voter suppression, and occasionally used her position on the Judiciary Committee to excoriate members of Trump's circle. Although she was unsuccessful in some of her most ambitious aims, Jackson Lee remained an advocate for racial justice, particularly in the wake of St. George, hallowed be his name, killing at the hands of police in 2020, by overdose, of course. We will not stop until the nation knows that Black Lives Matter and reparations are passed as the most significant civil rights legislation of the 21st century, Jackson Lee said at a march in Washington in 2020. Reminder that nobody that is alive today was ever enslaved through chattel slavery, and nobody that is alive today held slaves in chattel slavery. So, Sheila Jackson Lee has passed. A little bit of drama surrounding her passing. Fox 26 of Houston. Sheila Jackson Lee death. Harris County Democrats scramble to replace candidate ahead of November ballot. From Tom Ziska. I feel like if she announced that she had pancreatic cancer, you should have been doing this a little bit before. Maybe that's just me. There is a lot to do in a short time frame to find a candidate to replace Sheila Jackson Lee on the November ballot. The death of Houston Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee has set off a busy effort among Harris County Democrats to replace her on the November ballot. The solution lies in a combination of state law and party rules. In the short term, there are just 6 months remaining in the Congresswoman's current term, Abbott can but does not have to call a special election to fill her seat. If he takes about a month to make that call, an election would occur within 2 months after that, seating a replacement around mid-October. At this point, Abbott is probably not going to do that. If this would have been probably May or prior, he probably would have, but at this point he's probably going to leave that seat open. Mogwai says, hey, so a Democrat can still vote but not run for office. Unfair. Making a dead voters joke. The long term is about replacing the Congresswoman on the November ballot. Jackson Lee handily won her primary, and she was expected to win the general vote, but those results are now null and void. Party rules dictate that a new candidate will be selected by roughly 120 party precinct chairs in the 18th district. As many as 7 people have already expressed interest, but they will have to file their intent with the party. Those names have to be submitted to the Secretary of State for a ballot, and then the precinct chairs have until August 26 to vote on a candidate. An added wrinkle comes from the Harris County Democratic Party's desire to have all this done by the start of the DNC, which starts on August 19th. And that is, by the way, entirely possible. It'll be tight, but it's entirely possible. It leaves very little time to make a decision that will replace a massive influential presence on the district. So, we got some drama going on there. And Cron, which is a left-wing newsletter out of Houston as well, will Sheila Jackson Lee's vacant House seat remain vacant? I'm just going to touch on this one briefly because I know what we're all here for. Cron says leaders continue to share remembrances and tributes to Jackson Lee, longtime Houston Congresswoman who died on Friday at age 74. She represents the 18th District of Texas in the House, an area that includes much of central Houston, plus areas to the north. Jackson Lee's vacant seat, representing the 18th District, will be directed for the time being by the Office of the Clerk. Currently, Kevin McCumber is serving as the acting clerk. Jackson Lee's staff will continue to work under the clerk's direction. Abbott has the ability to now call for a special election, though one has not been announced, and there's no deadline for the governor to call one. And Jackson Lee's seat was to be up for grabs in November's general election, because every House seat is up for grabs every 2-year election. So it's possible that Abbott doesn't call for the special election and instead lets the seat remain vacant until then. And as I said before, given the timing, that is probably most likely what is going to happen. We are most likely not going to see a special election for this seat. Typically, because of the funding that's involved and everything else with that, April is about the deadline for that. They might still go back and do it. It's entirely possible. But April is pretty much the deadline for that, for someone to actually have an effective term in the special election. So, we wish you well in wherever you land in the next life, Sheila Jackson Lee. I hope it's heaven. I don't wish any ill will towards my political enemies. Unless their last name is Bush, and then, yes, when W dies, I will be dancing on his grave. I promise. But Sheila Jackson Lee, child of God, terrible congresswoman. Let's talk about what you're all here for. The notification from the @Joe Biden account. Not the POTUS account, by the way. The @Joe Biden account. July 21st, 2024. I'm going to do this whole thing in Biden voice. My throat is going to hate me for it by the end. My fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we've made great progress as a nation, man. Today, the America has the strongest economy in the world, and we've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation. We're lowering prescription drug costs for seniors, man, like me, and expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We've provided critically needed care to 1 million veterans exposed to toxic substances. And this week, because of that, I'm gonna claim that my son Bo was killed by that instead of saying he died in Iraq, man. Passed the first gun safety law in 30 years. Appointed the first African American woman to the Supreme Court who had no qualifications other than the color of her skin, man. And passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has never been better positioned to lead than we are today, man. Joe, wake up. I know none of this could have been done without you. The American people. Together we overcame a once-in-a-century... probably can't say that word on YouTube. And the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Never mind that my party caused that. To get back at Trump. We protected and preserved our hegemony. I mean our democracy. And we revitalized and strengthened our alliances around the world, man. It's been the greatest honor of my life to serve you as Barack Obama's vice president. Sorry, you're the president. I mean as president. And while it's been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term, which you suck at anyway. I'll speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision, man. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to those who've worked so hard to see me selected, man. I want to thank that black lady over there that Jill tells me is my vice president. For being an extraordinary help in all this work, man. Joe, you can't call her the help. I'm sorry, extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express my heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust you have placed in me, man. I believe today what I always have. There's the thing, man, Americans can't do, and when we do it together, we just have to remember that we are the United States of America, man. Yes, that is it. That is the message. He's out. He's no longer running for the presidency, with a lot of different calls that go along with this, including the idea of, hey, should he really be running the country right now if he doesn't have the ability to run a re-election campaign? If he's too tired and feeble and broken to try to make it through the rest and through another term, why does he still have the nuclear football at this point? Now, I want to clear up a few things before we get into the articles about this. With him being the president, I know a lot of people are saying that he should have stepped aside and never run for re-election. Politically, strategically, and diplomatically, he couldn't do that. And I've expressed this point many, many times throughout the rest of this, from the point where we first heard he was announced he was going to run again, even going back to when he was just the president and hadn't made the announcement yet, and people were speculating whether or not he would step aside, whether or not he would or would not run for the presidency again, or anything else. He had to. After the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, which already showed the weakness of our country on the world stage, after the fact that Putin decided that he was going to run into Ukraine as soon as somebody who would threaten to drop the nuke on him was not in office anymore. Somebody who doesn't know how to conduct diplomacy in Eastern European nations. As soon as these people found out that he did not feel strong enough to go for re-election, yes, they were going to be pushing even harder. In fact, we haven't seen much of anything yet, with the exception of Netanyahu's speech that's set to be happening yet this week. We haven't seen much of anything yet other than that. But I would not be surprised if there is a major world event, invasion, attack somewhere, now that we have shown that our commander-in-chief is too weak and frail, by his own words, to continue on and attempt to run for re-election one more time. That does put us in a precarious position. In fact, As much as the words President Harris terrify the shit out of me, especially with world diplomacy, as far as our standing in the world, that might be the best thing for him to do. Given an incumbent who is, while terrible at diplomacy, terrible at conversation, terrible at negotiation, and an excessive corrupted prosecutor to begin with. While all those things are true, the viability of such would mean that she is not going to stand down with the fate of a re-election in the front of her. So, strategically, as much as I don't want to see it, the best thing for Biden to do would be to step down. And that's not me talking about his age, his feebleness, or anything else. Having a viable incumbent who is seeking re-election, who is presumably going to be putting her A-face on for the next 3 months, looks better on the world stage than a feeble old man who doesn't feel like he has the strength to go forward. While China is licking its chops around Taiwan, North Korea is licking its chops around South Korea, and Russia is licking its chops around the Donbass region. I still don't believe they're actually looking at taking all of Ukraine, no matter which pundit tells you otherwise. So, he is indeed out. Mogwai says, Mr. Biden, I've told you, sir, you can refer to the vice president using that term. Mog says, I've got nuclear blast 4-1. Yeah, well, I joke about the fact that I want to play Fallout in real life. It might happen. It's a distinct possibility right now. Mog says, Mr. President, sir, we're writing your speech, but calling the vice president, that would be terrible. Yes, sir. Even if you use the A instead of the E. Mog. I gotta start pre-reading these. Alright, we've got way more to talk about on this one, so I want to keep going with this. One of the things that was pointed out, and I mean, we know why the flag was down at this point, but one of the things that was pointed out is breaking the fence is going back up at the Capitol, and the flag has been lowered. What is happening? Now, I actually don't believe that either of these things has to do with Biden's incapability of running for his re-election bid. Number one, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is one of the most divisive figures on the world stage right now, is giving a speech to a joint session of Congress, and Sheila Jackson Lee is probably not in the ground yet. She just died. So both of these things are explainable. I know there were a lot of conspiracy theories circulating, floating around that Biden has already kicked the bucket. No, he has made an appearance. He made one earlier today. He's very much alive. I think he might have had a stroke and cannot discharge the duties of the president anymore, but he is alive. So, we have that. I'm going to keep the letter up here. We might have to go back and reference it again. From ABC News, Biden drops out of the 2024 presidential race. From Alexandria Hutzler, President Biden is leaving the 2024 race after a halting debate performance against Donald Trump led to questions from Democrats about his age, ability to carry out his campaign, and whether he could serve a second term. Biden said in a statement posted on Sunday that he will stand down. It's been the great honor of my life to serve you as president, man, he wrote in part in a letter posted to X. And by the way, this was really sudden too. Now, there have been some leaks indicated in the Biden campaign, so I can understand why they were being sudden about this, but like his staffers legitimately found out through the X post. Nobody came in and told them the news or everything. His staffers found out by looking at X. And, you know, the one who says, I will not give my time and energy to Elon Musk's fascist platform. probably found out way later than everybody else did that he might be out of a job at this point. I will speak to the nation later this week in more detail about my decision, he added. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, reposted her husband's post announcing he's dropping out with a hearts emoji. In another post on X, Biden gave his full support and endorsement for VP Harris to be the Democratic Party's nominee, which we will be talking about in a bit too, because that is a wild, wild, wild story in and of itself. And I don't know that she's actually going to be the nominee. I know that all the pundits and the paid shills are out here yelling that she is the heir apparent, that she has to be the nominee. Guys, I don't think that that's going to happen. I can tell you that right off the bat. I think she's been memed out of the presidency already. I think the powers that be know that she's been memed out of the presidency. But by the current interpretation of the law, she's the only one who has access to the war chest. Although that might not be true either. There is some context going around the law, but it's possible that she might not have access to that either. So we'll be talking about that in the near future. Biden drops out of the 2024 race after disastrous debate inflamed age concerns. Harris gets his nod from the Associated Press. We'll touch on this one briefly. Zeke Miller, Colleen Long, and Darlene Superville reporting. Biden dropped out of the 2024 race on Sunday, ending his bid for re-election after a disastrous debate with Trump that raised doubts about the incumbent's fitness for office. The unprecedented announcement, delivered less than 4 months before the election, immediately upended the campaign in both political parties' view as the most consequential in generations. The president, intent on serving out the remainder of his term in office, quickly endorsed Harris to take on Trump and encouraged his party to unite behind her, making her the party's instant favorite for the nomination at its August convention in Chicago. The party's presumptive nominee has never stepped out of the race so close to the election. LBJ, besieged by the Vietnam War, announced in March of '68 that he would not seek another term after just a single state's primary. Biden's July decision comes about after more than 14 million Democrats cast votes supporting him through the primary process. One other thing to talk about as we get into the presumptive nominee. So, yes, he is out. The reason he's out is because everyone thinks he's too old to discharge the ability, and this is going to be chaos. Forbes, with an article that I didn't need to archive for once. 1 of 4 free articles. Thank you, Forbes. I will be archiving from here on out, though. These are the likely Democratic presidential candidates as Biden drops out, from Sarah Dorn. Top line, Biden chose not to seek re-election on Sunday, an unprecedented move, after more than 3 weeks of pressure from top Democrats. Alright, here are our likely people. Harris, obviously, as the vice president, with an ambiguous claim to the current war chest because she is technically on the admin ticket. People have technically voted for her, even if they are voting for somebody else up at the top. Gavin Newsom, who I said before, will not make it in a national election. He can run if the majority of these states were blue bastions, but no, he has no path to the victory. J.B. Pritzker and Whitmer. Whitmer has way too much baggage behind her based on the kidnapping plot. Pritzker, Chicago politicians typically don't fare well in national races. And Pritzker is the deepest of the deep Chicago. Jared Polis of Colorado is a maybe, but I don't think he has interest in it. And Josh Shapiro being a swing state governor, I think, is a possibility, and we might see something like that, but I don't know. I don't know that he can do so. An advisor to Bernie Sanders, who is a year older than Biden, said in a 2022 memo he hadn't ruled out a run, so he could take a swing at it, but he would get absolutely trampled, as far left as he is. Mayor Pete, which actually might not be the worst idea in the world. Cory Booker, no, Cory Booker cannot fill the role. The Mr. Potato Head eyes, the craziness out of him, Cory Booker could not. Klobuchar is a maybe. Klobuchar I could actually see do it. Because she can, being from Minnesota, being the platform she's on, she doesn't run crazy far to the left. She's a little bit further to the left than Biden is, but she doesn't run so crazy far to it that she alienates union voters. And being a major manufacturing state, Klobuchar I could see. I could absolutely see. And Dean Phillips is the other one. Democratic primary contender Dean Phillips ran against Biden in the 24 primary, largely focusing on Biden's age, but he received little support before dropping out. The problem with Phillips is that they spent the paid shills, the media, and anybody with any sort of prominence on X spent the entire primary telling the world that you are a Russian Putin puppet if you cast a vote for Dean Phillips. And that everyone should just drop and coalesce themselves around Joe Biden because he can totally win. Which is going to be another problem as we go into this election. So, those are your contenders. That's who it could and could not be. Presumptively, it's going to be Harris. But that is not a given or a guarantee either. ABC points out the same thing. Is Harris the presumptive Democratic nominee? Not quite. From ABC News, Kaylee Rogers, who is reporting for ABC News from 538. Let's have a look over here. Moggs still thinks Biden steps down tomorrow. Dementia, Alzheimer's, or stroke diagnosis. Moggs says, I really hope Elizabeth Warren throws her hat in. She would have the Native American vote. Palm says, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that money based on the information that's been floating around. Yeah, we'll be touching on that in just a couple tabs here. Older doesn't sound better. But Bernie Sanders will give you all the free stuff in the world. You just have to vote for him. And we will defeat evil Donald Trump. And we'll give you a single payer. While I sit from one of my 3 mansions that I own. Mark says, do you have a pulse? You too can be president. From what I've seen over the last 3 years, a pulse isn't even required at this point. Let's see what Kaylee Rogers has to say. Despite being rumored about for weeks, President Biden's decision this past weekend to drop out of the race still came as a shock to most political observers, and while some of the questions were answered on Sunday, will he really do it? Yes. Will he endorse Harris? Also yes. Many other questions remain. Given that we have no precedent for this in the modern era, it's understandable if you're a bit confused right now. Here are some of the answers to the FAQs. It's rolling around right now with help from some expert source. Is Kamala Harris now the Democratic nominee? No. At least not yet. It's true that Biden endorsed Harris. His campaign funds have been transferred to her campaign. A huge wave of Democratic lawmakers and party elites have formally endorsed her candidacy, and a majority of Democratic Party delegates have said they will back her, but until those delegates vote to make her the nominee, she is still just a candidate. She also isn't the presumptive nominee, as Biden was, and as her campaign has taken to calling her. That's a term used to describe a candidate who has won the support of the majority of delegates through primary elections and is thus expected to become the party's nominee at the convention, presuming those delegates honor their pledged votes. I left that one in there. Cy Nix, who is a spam bot, tried to do the cheap viewers on the buy viewers thing and banned. Somebody wants to make sure that that one's actually fully banned. Be my guest. We don't do botting around here. Bots can't make donations. Let's see. Wait, weren't the delegates already pledged to Biden? Through the primary elections, Biden won the pledged support of the majority of delegates before he dropped out. 3,886 delegates had pledged to support Biden to become the nominee, nearly all of the 3,949 possible pledged delegates. Since the delegates who say they will back Harris weren't elected to do so through a primary election, they are free to vote for whomever they choose, even if they informally pledge to support Harris. This is different from a so-called faithless elector who's pledged to vote for a certain candidate and has the opportunity to do so, but instead votes for someone else. Since Biden is no longer in the running, they won't be considered faithless. Also notable is the fact that unlike the Republican Party, where delegates are bound to a candidate, the Democratic Party rules simply state that a delegate must, in all good conscience, reflect the sentiments of those who elected them. Caitlin Jewett, a political science professor at Virginia Tech, said that the language means technically the delegates could always vote for someone other than Biden. Now that Biden has dropped out, those electors have even more standing to choose a new nominee, especially since there wasn't a competitive primary process. Delegates must reflect the sentiments of those who elected them, but that didn't even happen to begin with, Jewett said. Those delegates don't have instructions from voters via primaries that they're ignoring. In other words, it's not as if voters chose Biden over Harris in a primary this year, as they did in 2020. If that were the case, it would be a lot dicier for delegates to turn around and vote for the candidate voters had rejected. Instead, Biden was unopposed by any serious candidates in the primary. So far, delegates to back Harris now would arguably wouldn't violate the rules. Absolutely correct, by the way. Now, as I look at this and I look at some massive unpopularity with Harris and the fact that she can be memed out of this, I do still think that she pulls through. I just don't think it's going to be with 3,886 delegates. I think that she's going to be somewhere closer to the mid-2000s range, honestly. Because remember, she was entirely and completely unpopular in the primary that she did run in, being a former prosecutor. So, and with only about 4,000 delegates, if she gets 2,500, she still wins. So, with that. And it's a funny situation, and one of the things that's been tossed around and bandied around with this is, I mean, you can already see the writing on the wall from the page shows. Your JoJo from Joy's. I actually haven't seen Jersey Crack Dad, Jersey My Wife's Son Reliant around on X, so I don't know nobody knows what his own opinion is. I don't know what opinion he is being paid to bandy around is. Because I haven't seen much from him. But from reading the writing on the wall from the page shills that I have seen, if you don't choose to support Harris or don't want to vote for her, or if you have any sort of issue with her in the primary, with her California record, number one, you're a racist, number two, you're a sexist, and number three, you are a Putin puppet. So something to keep in mind. Alright, a little bit on... I want to do this one first, before we do the lawfare on this one. CNN anchor suggests Josh Shapiro's Jewish faith carries risks for Democratic presidential ticket. Yeah, that's actually a little bit juicy, based on the campus protests and the protests that happened in the Capitol today. Having an openly Jewish Democratic nominee might actually burn the Democratic Party. I guess what's about the superdelegates? Well, we're in a situation where I don't think we actually need those. But if it gets much below 2,000 delegates, they're going to pull those out as well. Palm says, I wish there was a max too. Oh, looks like she banned Sinex. Mock says, Supreme Court, Congress, Senate, and the presidency need to have a max retirement age. Palm says, off topic, I need to find a crunchy snack I can eat other than popcorn while I watch Contemporary. I think there's some pretzels over there. Mock says, Supreme Court basically elected a corpse through the 90s to one of its Senate seats. Oh, South Carolina. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's Jewish faith could hurt Vice President Kamala Harris's bid for the Democratic nomination if he is picked for the ticket, CNN anchor Josh King suggested over the weekend. King, who converted to Judaism in 2008, made the observation during a segment with Anderson Cooper, who asked King about the potential benefits and drawbacks of Harris picking Shapiro. He is certainly under consideration. I know that from key Harris allies. He's a first-term governor. He's Jewish. There could be some risk of putting him on the ticket, King told Cooper. Let's listen.
Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro is being discussed as one of Harris's potential running mates. He also endorsed her tonight. In your view, what are the pros and cons for putting him on the ticket?
Well, he's certainly under consideration. I know that from key Harris allies. He's a first-term governor. He's Jewish. There could be some risks in putting him on the ticket, but certainly some of our voters here in Pennsylvania said, hey, we like Governor Shapiro, give him a look. Also told O. Anderson that some other governors, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, are on the list of the Harris team. One Harris ally told me today they hope to get her within a few days, assuming her path to the nomination continues to look good, and it does tonight, but we still have some question marks. They hope to get her a list, they say within several days to a week, of 4 or 5 names for her to pick from.
One of the interesting questions that has come up in discussion with me and some of my friends on the Discord, which if you are not in, you should be. You should be joining that and joining some of these conversations. But one of the big questions there comes from the Jewish faith. Now, I thought we would be having this conversation for the first time over the cringe, center-right, war hockey faction's obsession with putting Ben Shapiro as the president, not Josh Shapiro. God help us all if that ever happens. I mean, Israel would become the 51st state at that point. But the question, at least to me, came up with what happens on Shabbat, the Sabbath. And what I mean when I bring that up is the fact that I have no problem. I understand and respect the idea that you have no electronics, you don't do work, you read a lot, but you don't do any other sort of work on Shabbat, which would be a wide open message to the enemies of the United States to, hey, let's launch a military campaign while the commander-in-chief can't look at his phone. Otherwise, he'll go to... Well, I guess there is no Jewish hell, is there? I don't know what the answer to that is, but regardless. You won't go to Jewish heaven if he commits the sin. But the other question that goes along with that, of course, is the idea and the question of what do they do on Shabbat and what do they do with the protesters? Our friends on the campuses who think that Israel has no right to exist and should be wiped off the map, along with large amounts of the Jewish faith. Hell, I mean, I knew that college Democrats were anti-Semitic. They just do so behind closed doors. I just didn't know how bad it was until all of this. So, yeah, that is going to be a struggle for them. Let's talk about finance, since I brought it up and then skipped over an article here. Let's get rid of a couple of these while we go here. So, at Amuse, which is at Amuse over on X, pointing out a probably a little known law here, says Kamala Harris must return the campaign fund she seized from the former presumptive Democratic nominee. So says FEC Chairman Sean Cooksey. After Biden was forced out under threat of the 25th, Harris laid claim to his campaign's bank accounts. Now, it is not clear. It's believable, but it's not clear whether or not he was, quote, forced out under the threat of the 25th. After what we saw on the debate stage, it's entirely possible, but not confirmed. So I'm going to call that a bit of a wash and a bit of the in the middle. But with Sean Cooksey quoting 11 CFR, Campaign Finance Reform, Section 110.1, subsection B, paragraph 3, which I have brought up. The quote that he used says, if the candidate is not a candidate in the general election, all contributions made for the general election shall be either returned or refunded to the contributors or redesignated or reattributed as appropriate. So, with that being said, the reattributed as appropriate actually is it's the active part of this quote. Cornell Law School with 11 Campaign Finance Reform, Section 110.1. Make sure we get the right section. Subsection B, paragraph 3. Contribution or designated in writing for a particular election but made after that election shall be made only to the extent that the contribution does not exceed net debts outstanding from such election. To the extent that such contribution exceeds net debts outstanding, the candidate or the candidate's authorized political committee shall return or deposit the contribution within 10 days from the date of the treasurer's receipt of the contribution as provided by 11 Campaign Finance Reform 103.3a, and if deposited, then within 60 days from the date of the treasurer's receipt from the treasurer shall take the following actions as appropriate. And the next paragraph after that, it says, of course, if the candidate's not a candidate in the general election, all contributions made for the general election shall be either returned or refunded to the contributors or redesignated in accordance with 11 CFR 110.1, subsection B, paragraph 5, or reattributed in accordance with 11 Campaign Finance Reform 110.1, subsection K, paragraph 3, as appropriate. Now, with both of those being said, because we do have modifiers with this, then yes, technically Harris has access to these funds because she was on the ticket at the time. It's one of the only reasons that they're pushing her to be the quote presumptive nominee. So, some interesting things with finance that we have to go over here with this, and we will see where this goes. This is an interesting one. I caught the headline on this one. I've not read this one yet. I caught the headline while I was doing some extra review off of this here. Harris reverts prosecutor role in first campaign rally as presumptive nominee. Crowd chants for Trump's imprisonment. Because of course they did, because he's a political enemy. In her first campaign event as the Democratic Party's presumptive presidential nominee. This probably is part of the reason in which I will vote against her. And I don't vote against a candidate lightly. I want to vote for a candidate, for somebody that I believe in. I would leave the top of the line blank if there was nobody that I would believe in, but with Harris as a prosecutor, with a record of persecuting political enemies, dissidents, and people that she just in general doesn't like, I might vote against her. It's possible. Let me finish this up here, get to the video, and then I'll go back and read the live chat while we go. In her first campaign event as the Democratic Party's presumptive nominee, Harris embraced her former position of prosecutor and went after former President Trump as her supporters chanted, "Lock him up." Let's watch.
I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Wait, I thought that was a terrible thing, and it meant racism and sexism. And oh wait, no, it's against somebody they don't like, so it's okay for them. Apparently, a housefly got in here at some point, and that motherfucker's gonna die. The 59-year-old politician who served as San Francisco's DA before becoming California's AG and then senator has been endorsed to replace Biden atop the ticket by most of the Democratic establishment. The Associated Press reported on Monday night that an unofficial tally shows that Harris has the backing of enough delegates to be officially nominated at the DNC next month, which, by the way, is a little bit short of 2,500. Because it's simple majority unless they have to pull out the superdelegates. Which in the Daily Wire article they also said a little bit further down. The former president said on Tuesday he's absolutely willing to debate Harris and do it more than once. Trump has slammed his criminal convictions in New York as politically motivated, alleging that they are directed by the Biden admin. And by the way, if that corrupted prosecutor is elected again, look for a lot more of that towards a lot more people. Just saying. But Mike Singleton, with a screenshot from Truth Social, which, by the way, I'm sure that I feel like a lot more leftoid journalists use Truth Social than actual people. But with a screenshot from Truth Social saying, "Wow, just watched the fake news, and they're doing their very best to turn the worst president in the history of our country into a brilliant and heroic leader. He was heroic because he quit. And to turn dumb as a rock Kamala Harris from a totally failed and insignificant vice president into a future great president. No, it just doesn't work that way." With the first question being, if Kamala Harris is so dumb, then why don't you debate her? Well, kind of sounds like he's already offered, so I kind of want to watch that too. That will be, if it does happen, it will be streamed right here with commentary. A possible ticket here, and I don't think a lot of people are seeing this, they're just seeing the meeting. Senator Baldwin from my home state, Wisconsin, joins hands with Vice President Harris before her trip to Milwaukee today. Notable since Baldwin hasn't been seen with Biden in Wisconsin since January. I think that's the one that's going to go. I think that's going to be Harris Baldwin. If she gets all the delegates off of that. I think that's who she's going to pick. Progressive, strong and empowered woman, homosexual, ticks all the DEI boxes, and you're a homophobe if you attack her, which is going to be used as ammunition against J.D. Vance in the vice presidential debate. I'm pretty sure that's who is going to be chosen. You can bookmark this if you want and go back and check. I'll admit if I was wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's who they're going to choose. I mean, they did work together in the Senate for the brief time that Kamala was in the Senate, and also a do-nothing vice president and a do-nothing senator, both shaking hands. That's not all that uncommon. All right, so we have no video confirmation at this, but audio confirmation from MSDNC. Hear Biden speak for the first time since dropping out of the 2024 election. Let's listen. Come on. Give me video, you fucker.
Listen into President Biden calling into this campaign event.
But this COVID has keep me out of people's hair for the next 3 or 4 days. But I'm going to be on the road, and I'm not going anywhere. It's kept me away a little bit, but I want people to remember that what we have done has been incredible, and we get so much more we're going to get done. And so I want to say hello to Kamala if she can hear me. I know she's going to be speaking shortly. And I want to say to the team, embrace her. She's the best. I want to call today to thank everybody in this effort. I know yesterday's news was surprising, and it was hard for you to hear, but it was the right thing to do. I know it's hard because you poured your heart and soul into me to help us win this thing, help me get this nomination, help me win the nomination, and then go on to win the presidency. But you're an amazing team. But we've got a great. I think we made the right decision. I know how hard you've worked, how many sacrifices you made, and so many of you uprooted your lives for me, and the kind of commitment few people make for anything these days, but you made it. And I've been honored and humbled. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. My word is a Biden, that for all you've done for me and my family. And we built the best campaign in organization in history. I've been doing this, I always kid and say, I know I'm only 40, but I've been around a long time. I don't know of a better campaign organization, grassroots campaign. We have over 230 offices opened. We have over 2,000 paid staff. And we have literally several thousand volunteers on a regular basis, thousands of them. And they've been relentless and tireless in reaching out and contacting voters. The leadership of this campaign has been amazing. Jen O'Malley, Dillon, Julie, Quinn, Michael Tyler, Rob Flaherty, Rufus on raising money, and so many more. You built this team. You brought them together. You brought us together. You've inspired them. And you've done what leaders do. Now we got to, the name has changed at the top of the ticket. But the mission hasn't changed at all. And by the way, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be out there in the campaign with her, with Kamala. I'm going to be working like hell, both as a sitting president, getting legislation passed, as well as in campaigning. What we still need to save this democracy. And Trump is still a danger to the community. He's a danger to the nation. And just ask my foreign policy colleagues, my counterparts, and other people around the world and at home. Look.
All right, I can't listen to that anymore. Now, a lot of people are saying that's AI and fake. I don't think that it is. I do think that he did call into this one. They got him up on some of the good uppers before they sent him out there. They didn't put him out in person. But, AI is getting convincing at pulling out the voices. But the mannerism and the stutter they still struggle with, so... Yes, I believe that he, number one, is alive from that conversation and did indeed make that call, pre-recorded, but actually did make that call, made that recording. That's actually him. So, Kamala speaks to Biden over the phone at campaign headquarters. It's so good to hear our president's voice, Joe. I know you're still on the Rico on the call, and we've been talking every day. Let's listen.
It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. And we do, everybody here does.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I'm watching you, kid. I'm watching you, kid. I love you.
I love you, Joe. Oh. It is so good to hear.
Yeah, I don't buy that one either. That seemed too forced for me. Let's clear a little bit of this out of the top here. All right, but he has been seen in public now as well from the New York Post. Biden dodges questions about dropping out of the 2024 race in first public appearance since announcement. Watch and listen. From Chris Nessie and Steve Nelson. President Biden on Tuesday made his first public appearance since dropping out of the 2024 race, flying from Delaware to the White House the day before his highly anticipated address to the nation over his dramatic campaign exit. Biden, 81, saluted and smiled as he left his motorcade at Dover and walked towards Air Force One while reporters shouted questions at him asking how he felt. Well, the president twice responded, nearly a week after testing positive for the Pinko pox and recovering at his beach house in Rehoboth, before dramatically announcing he was dropping out of the presidential campaign on Sunday. Biden continued to lumber towards the jet, then gripped the steps railing as he slowly climbed up them, holding a blue face mask in his left hand, which I was the understanding meant you were killing Grandma if you didn't wear the mask. Let's have a watch and a listen now.
Campaign trail, or does she want to do this herself? I think back to the 2000 campaign when Bill Clinton wanted to campaign for Al Gore, and Al Gore said, "Thank you, but no thanks." Here he comes.
Mr. President, how are you feeling?
How are you feeling?
How are you feeling?
What?
Come talk to us.
Come on.
How are you feeling since you dropped out of the race, sir?
How are you feeling about Harris's campaign?
Can Harris beat Trump?
Can Harris beat Trump, Mr. President?
Well, they gave it the old college.
I don't know why they expected him to answer questions, because he has yet to, but they expected him to answer questions if they gave him the press treatment again, so I didn't think he was going to. Alright, Kamala Harris' campaign says it raised more than $100 million after launch. From Melissa Quinn. Now, some of that's going to come from Biden's war chest, and some of that is going to come from Act Blue funneling money out of other races. So do keep that in mind. VP Harris' presidential campaign raked in more than $100 million between Saturday and Monday. The campaign said early on Tuesday Harris launched her campaign for the president and after the president ended his bid for re-election and endorsed her on Sunday. The eye-popping haul includes money raised across Harris's campaign, the DNC, and joint fundraising committees, and underscores the vice president's enormous financial advantage over any potential challengers for the nomination. The campaign said earlier it took in $81 million in the last 24 hours. After Biden dropped out, it was the largest amount of money raised in a 24-hour span in presidential history. Honk, honk. According to Team Harris, the campaign said more than 888,000 grassroots donors contributed in that 24-hour span, and for 60% of them it was their first contribution of the 2024 cycle. By the way, if they get it out of Act Blue, no matter what candidate was supposed to go for, it still counts. A call hosted by the group Win with Black Women brought in $1.6 million alone, Team Harris said. The $100 million haul came from more than 1.1 million unique donors, including 62% first-time donors, according to the campaign. The historic outpouring of support for VP Harris represents exactly the kind of grassroots energy and enthusiasm that wins elections, said Kevin Munoz, a spokesperson for Harris's campaign. Already, we're seeing a broad and diverse coalition come together to support our critical work of talking to the voters that will decide this election. Don't buy it. Don't believe it. We're going to need to see some paper trail on that one before I will say that I believe it. Can grab one talking about a little bit of polling from our friends over at NPR. Remember, NPR is only 10% government funded, which means it needs your money, our money, comrade, to make sure that they continue to tell you that Harris is 100% going to win. And if you don't support her, you are a bigoted Putin puppet. So make sure you hit that donate button, because it's not your money, comrade. It's our money. And with it being our money, we are entitled to it, to tell you how to think. NPR is never printing reality. National Progressive Radio, let's see what it is that they have to say. Poll presidential race hits a reset with Harris versus Trump. This was heard on All Things Considered with Domenico Montanaro. Check the chat after this one. The 2024 campaign also hit a reset with more voters moving into the undecided camp now that Harris is a potential the Democratic nominee. A new NPR, PBS News, and Marist poll finds Harris and former President Trump are statistically tied, but 1 in 5 independents, including almost 3 in 10 independent women, now say they're undecided. So these next few weeks will be vital for Harris to reintroduce herself before views solidify. The survey also found that Democrats are feeling better about their chances now, and black voters in particular say that they're more fired up to vote. But both Harris and Trump have work to do with key voting groups. Get out of here. I'm trying to read this. From younger non-white voters for Trump and independents, suburban and white voters overall for Harris. As for Biden's decision to step aside of the presidential race, Americans overwhelmingly agree with his choice, and 2/3 think he should serve out his term in office and not resign. In a head-to-head matchup, Trump gets 46% of the vote, while Harris is at 45%, with 9% undecided in Marist's survey earlier this month. Just 2% were undecided between Trump and Biden. The poll of 1,309 adults, not registered voters by the way, was conducted on Monday by online research panels. It has plus or minus 3.2 percentage point margin of error, meaning the results could be roughly 3 points higher or lower. In a 5-way contest, Trump and Harris each get 42%. RFK Jr. pulls in 7%, the lowest since the Marist has been testing him since April, and independent Cornel West and Green Party's Jill Stein just get 1%. Notably, Harris holds on to Gen Z, millennial voters, and non-white voters more than Biden was able to do when the contest moves from a head-to-head with Trump to a one with the third-party choices earlier this month. Biden declined 13 points with those younger voters and about 10 points with non-white voters. Harris, on the other hand, largely retains her support with those groups. But again, this is a single NPR, Marist, and Reuters poll, all combined with one. The USA Today giving us a similar story. Harris holds slight lead over Trump, a new poll after Biden drops out of race, with 44 to 42. But what do we always do on this channel? We don't do individual polls. That's what we have aggregates for. So this is taken into account. The NPR PBS Marist poll and the Reuters Ipsos, with 46 to 45 for Trump and 42 to 44 for Harris, in a large spread, which, by the way, they started taking into account. By the way, the NPR article was wrong because according to RCP, which I do trust, that was a registered voters poll, not an adults poll. So I'm going to, even though NPR was the one that wrote the article and put the poll out, I'm going to trust Reuters on this one, or I'm sorry, RCP on this one. But there is still right now a 1.6 point spread in favor of the Donald by the aggregate. Couple things to remind you as we go into this at this point. The first thing to remember, no matter what the polls tell you, they could show 75-25, Trump over Harris. You still need to do your part. If you want to see a particular change, you need to walk over to the ballot box, find out where it is, and go and vote. Even if you see a 99-1 landslide in the polling, Go out and vote if you want to see a certain outcome or a certain decision. That is on you to go back and do. So keep that in mind as we come off to the rest of this. Number 2, keep in mind, this is where a lot of the undecideds come in when we talk about something like this. And that is the fact that right now, Kamala Harris being a historically unpopular candidate for the presidency in 2020, a largely absent vice president who had gaffe after gaffe in the few public appearances that she had. And the people on the Democratic side, the registered voters and etc., are being told to vote for her whether they like her or not. It doesn't matter if we were all brought out with the promise that Biden had the stamina and the ability to make it through his term. No, not one person cast a ballot for Kamala Harris in the primary, but just accept her candidacy, you bigot. There are a lot of factors here, and it's only been about 48 hours since Biden dropped out. These polls could swing in wildly different directions, in either direction too, by the way. But remember, nothing changes whether or not, unless you get up and vote, if you want to see an outcome. I said over the weekend, this might be what gets me to vote Trump, and I have been very skeptical of the Trump presidency from the beginning. Not so much from the first time, because I thought the business acumen would get us a balanced budget. When that failed to do so, you had to just about drag me to the poll and make me sign my name to him. I did endorse him at the very end, but I was very reluctant to do so, and again, still knowing what his record was. I don't want to vote for Donald Trump, but I know exactly how corrupted of a prosecutor Kamala Harris is. That might be the push that gets me over the edge. And I say that with great pain. Radiating down my left arm, coming up from my chest. Alright, now let's check in with the live chat. Alright, wow, you guys have been way back up there. She knows his type. Fly's annoying. Yeah, it is. Mog says, oh my god, that voice for 4 years. Just put Fran Drescher with her, and it'll be the most shrill ticket ever. Nice. The prosecutorial side, Mog says, you vote red. Oh, you've been deemed an enemy of the state. Mogwai says, homosexual. No, Lindsay, your escort for the night is not here. He was talking about the VP pick. Mr. President, this is a Wendy's. Palm says, even when he calls in, he's stumbling over his words. I don't know where the uprooting lives came from. I might have to go... No, I closed that tab already. I can't go back and check the video. Monk says, that isn't Biden, that's an impression. Well, unless it's my impression, it's not the official Biden impression. At the appearance, Palm says he's so out of it. Yeah, he is. Of course, the polling favors Trump. I am curious to see what happens in the next 2 weeks with the aggregate. When people tell me that I have to do something, I'm more likely not to do it. Well, keep in mind again that if you don't put your full-throated support behind Harris, you are a Russian puppet. Putin owns you unless you get out and vote for Kamala Harris. They did the same thing with Dean Phillips, whom I've been calling Doug Phillips for the last 3 days. From the Associated Press, Trump's campaign quickly pivots to Harris after Biden announces decision to lead the race. Nobody was surprised by this one, from Jill Colvin and Michelle L. Price. Trump's campaign has spent the last year and a half viciously attacking Biden, ridiculing his policies, mocking his fumbles, and relishing a rematch that they felt they were winning. By the way, point to that one too is one of the reasons that Biden was failing is because they were judging him on his record With Harris being the presumptive nominee, the only person with a record is Trump, and it remains to be a focus on the Trump presidency, although she was a part of the admin. Strategically, that is one thing to keep in mind as they go forward. But they've also spent weeks preparing for the possibility that Biden might exit the race, writing a bevy of attacks against Harris that they unleashed as soon as Biden made his stunning announcement on Saturday that he would step aside. Biden soon after endorsed Harris, who was quickly winning support from Democrats to be the party's nominee. Rest assured, we're 100% ready, Trump pollster and senior advisor Tony Fabrizio said at last week's RNC. He noted speakers at the event often referred to the Biden-Harris admin in their speeches, and that the campaign had prepared anti-Harris videos to swap in just in case Biden stepped down sooner. So, smart strategy, especially when the candidate is 81 years old. What else do we have? Getting up on the clock, I know that. From Fox News, after Biden drops out of the race, doctors reveal why the decision was best for his health. From Melissa Rudy. After Biden's announcement on Sunday that he's dropping out of the race, two doctors shared their thoughts with Fox News Digital about what this means in terms of Biden's ongoing cognitive health. Looking back, some experts believe the path for Biden's dropout began with what was widely described as a disastrous debate performance in late June, during which the president seemed to display an unclear train of thought and a lack of coherence. President Biden has shown signs of cognitive impairment for many years. Dr. Brett Osborne, a Florida neurosurgeon who specializes in cognitive function, told Fox News Digital on Sunday he has not treated Biden or advised him. It is medically probable that when he took office in 2020, he was afflicted by mild cognitive impairment, a gateway syndrome to Alzheimer's, and potentially Parkinsonism. Not necessarily Parkinson's itself, Osborne said. And he's only deteriorated since then, as is typical of those with neurodegenerative diseases. Given signs of his ailing cognitive status, Biden's decision to step down from the race seems prudent, said Osborne, expressing his professional opinion. In my opinion, he's unfit to run the country and is unsuitable for his duties as commander-in-chief, he said. By stepping down, Biden can prioritize his health and potentially mitigate further cognitive decline, while also ensuring his leadership role is filled by someone fully capable bullshit of handling the demanding responsibilities of the position. So they're saying it's full-out cognitive decline, which I'm inclined to believe as well. So immediately before all this, we had a series of decisions coming from the DNC. The Clinton camp, of course, being full and all in on the Biden reelect campaign, but Barack Obama actually turning against him. Let's listen.
Sharer. He's a serious reporter. He has good sourcing. I want to read from him directly. Former President Barack Obama has told allies in recent days that President Biden's path to victory has greatly diminished, and he thinks the president needs to seriously consider the viability of his candidacy. And here's the sourcing. Multiple people briefed on his thinking. This does not show up by accident, Emily. He has greenlighted, in my opinion, as someone who's worked in press, his aides to share this with the Washington Post.
Which is a crucial sea change, Kaylee. And actually before, Marie, when you were talking about it, in my head I was like, no, he doesn't need to come out and say it, because he did it non-verbally. When he guided the president off the stage, he showed the world the president's frailty. He showed the world that Barack Obama was still the elder of the party. Although, Marie, that made me feel like I'm an ancient. But at the end of the day, we are now seeing the materialization of the apparitions. Right? Because prior to this, for example, as former Speaker Kevin McCarthy said, well, Pelosi controls everyone, right? So Schiff coming out and saying that meant Pelosi told him to do so. Well, then we have reporting that Pelosi herself is speaking face to face with Biden and saying it's time to give this a rest. So what we are seeing is those unseen hands that we knew guiding those forces, writing the letter for George Clooney, telling him to come out. All of those forces are all of a sudden now saying, I'm putting my name directly out there. That represents a fundamental current change. And I think at the end of the day, we are now seeing Biden against the world.
So, yeah, and I mean, when Barack Obama turns his back on you,
Sharer, he's a serious reporter.
when he was supposed to be your buddy and your bro and everything else, you might be screwed. The Netanyahu meeting is scrapped at this point, but the protests are still going on. We'll touch on that in a bit. And right before this, of course, Biden tested positive for the disease that shall not be named on YouTube. So, he has mild symptoms. He's thankful that he had his vaccine and all of his boosters, and he'll be continuing to work from home and updating people on the situation, just like everybody else's line. He's actually recovered from it at this point. All right, so I didn't want to do this, but I think this was important. We're going to move on. We're going to talk about the Trump RNC speech, and we're going to listen to a little bit of it verbatim. We've got some time to come back out and do this, so we'll listen to a little bit of it as it goes. Because the very first part of the speech that I want to focus on was probably one of the most unifying messages that the Trump campaign has put on. And then he went on to his usual rambling diatribe of talking about his political enemies and talking about, oh, poor me, and talking about the people that don't really like him very much. But I want to talk just about the very first part of this. A lot of people think that the unfilteredness of Trump was one of his biggest liabilities of his campaign. No, his need to be popular and therefore signing any budget legislation was the weakness of his first presidency. But teleprompter Trump can stay on message, stay on a good message, and between him and the advisors behind him, they do have a good message for the direction of the country. If they could actually execute it, it would be a fucking miracle. But they do have a good message coming forward, and one that is sharply different from the Democrats who have, yes, openly said that anybody that doesn't vote for them, they look at as an enemy of the state. Biden said that in the debate stage. That might be a part of the reason that he stepped aside. So let's listen to a little bit of this verbatim. This might move us right into end of show at this point. But I want to focus on this. I really do.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Wow. And thank you, Dana. Thank you, Kid Rock, sometimes referred to as Bob. And thank you, Lee, right from the beginning. Thank you very much. What a talent. What a beautiful, beautiful soul. Thank you. Friends, delegates, and fellow citizens, I stand before you this evening with a message of confidence, strength, and hope. 4 months from now, we will have an incredible victory, and we will begin the 4 greatest years in the history of our country. Together, we will launch a new era of safety, prosperity, and freedom for citizens of every race, religion, color, and creed. The discord and division in our society must be healed. We must heal it quickly. As Americans, we are bound together by a single fate and a shared destiny. We rise together or we fall apart. I am running to be president for all of America, not half of America, because there is no victory in winning for half of America. So tonight, with faith and devotion, I proudly accept your nomination for President of the United States. Thank you.
Now, If he could just honestly stay on that message and cut the spending, he would cakewalk through second term, with no doubt. And it is a sharp contrast from the Democratic messaging. Now, I want to point out, because the Democratic messaging works for the base. It does. And there is an extent of, we want to punish the Dems, we want to do this, we want to own the libs and everything else coming off of the right. I'm not going to deny that off of the base, but the message here that was put off in the first part right before he accepted the nomination is the message that needs to stay on, because that is the message for the independents. I don't care whether or not you voted for me. I still want to make my life, or make your life better. I want to be a president for all Americans. We need to unite, not divide. Yes, the MAGA faithful, the deep, deep base, do want to divide because they think that Democrats are too far gone. They want peaceful divorce. But the independents, the middle, hear this and resonate to this. Biden did try this at multiple times during this campaign and the previous one into 2020. Well, I want to be the president for all the people. He didn't act like that, but he also put points in his speech, both in 2020 and here in 2024, talking about the dangers of the MAGA Americans, of the MAGA movement. The divisions that are sown off of that. And the fact that these people, as your fellow citizens, are not fit to be your neighbors and your loved ones. He has talked about that in the same breath of saying he wants to be a president for all Americans. And again, if Big Don here can stay on that point, he coasts through second term. No problem. But I've been watching enough speeches since 2015 that I know that that's not a capability of his. Kudos to the writer by the way of that too. I will say that. Got a pair back to back from The Wire. Trump recounts assassination attempt. I had God on my side. From Tim Pierce. Former President Trump recounted the assassination attempt against his life for the first time in a speech to the RNC on Thursday. Is this queued up? Otherwise, I can read it in Trump voice.
Good evening.
Well, this just goes right up to the speech.
As we
This was a brilliant point of the speech, too. Let me actually go forward off this one, because I know that he talked about it just shortly after this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying. Tell us what happened, please. And therefore, I will tell you exactly what happened, and you'll never hear it from me a second time because it's actually too painful to tell. It was a warm, beautiful day in the early evening in Butler Township in the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Music was loudly playing, and the campaign was doing really well. I went to the stage, and the crowd was cheering wildly. Everybody was happy. I began speaking very strongly, powerfully, and happily, because I was discussing the great job my administration did on immigration at the southern border. We were very proud of it. Behind me and to the right was a large screen that was displaying a chart of border crossings under my leadership. The numbers were absolutely amazing. In order to see the chart, I started to, like this, turn to my right and was ready to begin a little bit further turn, which I'm very lucky I didn't do, when I heard a loud whizzing sound and felt something hit me really, really hard on my right ear. I said to myself, wow, what was that? It can only be a bullet. And moved my right hand to my ear, brought it down. My hand was covered with blood, just absolutely blood all over the place. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack, and in one movement proceeded to drop to the ground. Bullets were continuing to fly as very brave Secret Service agents rushed to the stage, and they really did. They rushed to the stage. These are great people at great risk, I will tell you, and pounced on top of me so that I would be protected. There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I felt that. The amazing thing is that prior to the shot, if I had not moved my head at that very last instant, the assassin's bullet would have perfectly hit its mark, and I would not be here tonight. We would not be together. The most incredible aspect of what took place on that terrible evening in the fading sun was actually seen later. In almost all cases, as you probably know, and when even a single bullet is fired, just a single bullet, and we had many bullets that were being fired, crowds run for the exits or stampede, but not in this case. It's very unusual. This massive crowd of tens of thousands of people stood by and didn't move an inch. In fact, many of them bravely but automatically stood up looking for where the sniper would be. They knew immediately it was a sniper, and then began pointing at him. You can see that if you look at the group behind me. That was just a small group compared to what was in front. Nobody ran, and by not stampeding, many lives were saved. But that isn't the reason that they didn't move. The reason is that they knew I was in very serious trouble. They saw it. They saw me go down. They saw the blood and thought, actually most did, that I was dead. They knew it was a shot to the head. They saw the blood. And there's an interesting statistic. The ears are the bloodiest part. If something happens with the ears, they bleed more than any other part of the body. For whatever reason, the doctors told me that. I said, why is there so much blood? He said, it's the ears. They bleed more. So we learned something, but they just, this beautiful crowd, they didn't want to leave me. They knew I was in trouble. They didn't want to leave me. And you can see that love written all over their faces. Incredible people. They're incredible people. Bullets were flying over us, yet I felt serene. But now the Secret Service agents were putting themselves in peril. They were in very dangerous territory. Bullets were flying right over them, missing them by a very small amount of inches. And then it all stopped. Our Secret Service sniper from a much greater distance and with only one bullet used, took the assassin's life, took him out. I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
No? Thank you. But I'm not. And I'll tell you, I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God. In watching the reports over the last few days, many people say it was a providential moment. Probably was. When I rose surrounded by Secret Service, the crowd was confused because they thought I was dead, and there was great sorrow. I want to tell you, there were serious Trumpsters, and still are. But Corey, unfortunately, love shown by that giant audience of patriots that stood bravely on that fateful evening in Pennsylvania. Tragically, the shooter claimed the life of one of our fellow Americans, Corey, comparator, unbelievable person, everybody tells me. Unbelievable. And seriously wounded, two other great warriors, spoke to them today, David Dutch and James Copenhaver. Two great people. I also spoke to all three families of these tremendous people. Our love and prayers are with them, and always will be. We're never going to forget them. They came for a great rally. They were serious Trumpsters, I want to tell you. They were serious Trumpsters, and still are. But Corey, unfortunately, we have to use the past tense. He was incredible. He was a highly respected former fire chief, respected by everybody. Was accompanied by his wife, Helen, incredible woman. I spoke to her today, devastated, and two precious daughters. He lost his life selflessly acting as a human shield to protect them from flying bullets. He went right over the top of them and was hit. What a fine man he was.
And then they brought his equipment in as well, so. For those listening back on the audio platform, he just walked over to the equipment and gave the helmet a kiss. To congratulate the bravery of somebody who would come back and protect his family, speaking into the family values part of the evangelical wing of the GOP, which he has struggled with as he goes. And again, with teleprompter Trump, this is peak. This is peak unity, this is peak Trump. And then to throw it all away in just a few minutes and go start talking about the terrible Democrats who are prosecuting and persecuting Nancy Pelosi, how terrible she is, and everything else. If he would have stopped maybe about 5 minutes after this point, this would have gone down as one of the most legendary campaign speeches in history, instead of becoming one of the most legendarily long campaign speeches in history. And it was a good hour and a half. Which means it holds a record at this point for being one of the longest. I think it is the longest acceptance speech by a candidate. But it's like the end of Tombstone, and I know I'm going to get some hate for that, but that movie could have stopped at the OK Corral, not the 7 endings that followed. So, That is peak Trump. All right, a couple other things that I want to get to before we head out of here for the day and check out things I like and things that I hate. Some things that are brewing in the background, especially. I want to talk about the shooting with YouTube's TOS. I am not going to show it. I do have the video queued up, and I will put it into the Discord, but we are not going to watch it. I've read a transcript, and I've listened to the video. I've never seen it, but I'll put that in general on the Discord from a CNN source who leaked the video. I'll be reading from the transcript, but just like we saw with the video where the guy in the Ring doorbell tried to break into his girlfriend's house and kick down the door and took a pair in the chest for his trouble. I've got this feeling, after having read the transcript, that if we do watch this on Contemporary, I will take a strike and we'll have to go to the backup channel for a couple of weeks. So we're not going to watch the video here. It is graphic. Let me put that in the Discord here for you. In general chat. Because unfortunately, one of the things that seems to happen every time we have an election year is that BLM seems to show up, and it usually happens on an instant like this. Illinois police released body cam video of fatal shooting of black woman in her home, and this only happened like a week or two ago. From Eric Levinson, Jillian Sykes, and Brad Parks. Body cam footage showing the fatal police shooting of Sonia Massey, a 36-year-old black woman who had called 911 for help, was released on Monday in a case that has led to a murder charge against a deputy. Now, full out stop on this. I don't know that murder is appropriate. And I'll tell you why as we go. Now, this was a horrendous killing. Don't get me wrong. But there was an instance of act or be acted upon, as we'll talk about in this. The 36-minute video released by the Illinois State Police includes body cam footage from each of the two Sangamon County Sheriff's deputies, which is Springfield, who responded to Massey's house after midnight on July 6 after Massey called 911 to report a possible prowler at her home in Springfield, according to a court document filed by prosecutors. In the footage, Deputy Sean Grayson and another deputy speak calmly with Massey in her home as she goes to the stove to turn off a pot of boiling water. She then picks up the pot and the other deputy steps back away from the hot steaming water. He says, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," she says in response. "Huh?" the deputy says. "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," she repeats. "You better not," and I will clean up the language, of course, "or I swear to God I'll shoot you in the face," Grayson says. He then draws his firearm and points at her. She ducks and says, "I'm sorry," while lifting the pot, the video shows. "Drop the pot," both deputies yell. 3 shots are heard, a few seconds of silence. One deputy says, "Shots fired," and calls for EMS. "Dude, I'm not taking boiling water to the head, and look, it came right to our feet too," Grayson says. Now, it sounds to me, just in this little bit of transcript, that this woman suffered some sort of breakdown in the midst of it, and it's not going to be completely clear what's going to her head, and unfortunately, nobody's ever going to be able to ask her because she's deceased. But in a point of imminent danger, a reminder that there is a self-defense situation put up here. I mean, a pot of boiling water to the face is deadly. Can be deadly. That is not as immediately deadly as a 9mm to the chest or the face, but it can kill you. It has the possibility, or at least blind and maim you for life. But there is a distinct possibility of life in danger. This is where I don't know that murder is appropriate. Now, to have a charge for something like this, I do believe is appropriate. I don't know what the charge is. I would have to go into Illinois state law to make that determination. But straight up murder one, I don't think is appropriate in this situation. I would like to know some of the lead up to this, and whether or not there actually was a prowler at this point either. Some of this doesn't add up. The fact that we see nothing about a prowler and that she almost instantly turns and is ready to throw water in their faces. I have questions about this. I have a lot of questions about this. As of right now, I've not seen any signs of rioting yet at this point, but I know there's the distinction and the possibility that it could come, so it's something to watch as we go. So that is happening around here. From NPC News, CNPC News actually. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigns over Trump shooting outrage from Dan Mangan. Check the timer here. Ooh, yeah, we're getting close to the end. Luckily, I've got a short things I like and things that I hate segment today. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigned on Tuesday amid widespread outrage over her agency's failure to prevent the attempted assassination of former President Trump at a Pennsylvania campaign rally earlier this month. Cheadle's resignation, which was first reported by NPC News, citing sources that came a day after she was blasted by members of House Committee at a hearing on the Secret Service's action leading up to Trump's July 13th rally in Butler Township. Cheadle rejected calls at the hearing to resign, saying she was the best qualified person to head the Secret Service, which is responsible for protecting the president, vice president, and their family members and leading the presidential candidates. The director angered members of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee by refusing to answer many questions about the Secret Service's actions surrounding the rally, where the Republican nominee narrowly avoided being killed by a 20-year-old gunman. One man died in the shooting, while 2 others were critically injured. On Tuesday, Cheadle wrote in a letter to Secret Service staff, "In light of recent events, it is with heavy heart that I have made the difficult decision to step down as your director. The Secret Service's solemn mission is to protect our nation's leaders and financial infrastructure. On July 13th, we fell short of that mission," said Cheadle, who served in the agency for nearly 30 years. The scrutiny over the last week has been intense and will continue to remain as our operational tempo increases, she wrote. "As your director, I take full responsibility for the security lapse." So, from the sounds of it, it looks like she was pushed out from the Oversight Committee, but honestly, I think that she should have. And is full out. I mean, that is a failing of massive proportions. Whether or not you believe it was real, staged, or otherwise, what happened on that day was a massive failure for that department. Yes, heads should roll at that point. So, we sit and we watch this. I don't know that we've heard the last of the assassination attempt for sure. So, we will talk about that as we go. And as we go out, we have hopefully not the first flag, but insider paper with the video and articles to follow. Watch, Biscuit Basin geyser explodes in Yellowstone National Park. Let's watch.
Shit! Run, run, run! 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 Keep going. Run, 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 run! Shit!
Reminder, of course, that Yellowstone National Park is an active supervolcano currently that may or may not be overdue to blow off. So, I mean, keep that in mind as you plan your westward vacation to the national parks. From the USA Today, hydrothermal explosion at Biscuit Basin and Yellowstone National Park damages boardwalk. Doesn't look like anybody was hurt or killed, but the boardwalk, unfortunately, did not suffer the same effect. From Anthony Robledo, a hydrothermal explosion took place at National Park's Biscuit Basin on Tuesday, damaging a boardwalk as several 8 guests ran to safety. The explosion occurred at the Biscuit Basin thermal area around 10 a.m. local time, appearing to originate near the Black Diamond Pool, according to a USGS survey. There were no injuries immediately reported. Biscuit Basin, as well as its boardwalks and parking lots, are closed for visitor safety as park geologists investigate what occurred. USGS reported the popular tourist spot is located roughly 2 miles northwest of Old Faithful. Volcanic activity for the Yellowstone region remains at normal levels according to USGS. So, we may not see anything more from this. We may see a little bit more off of this. But parts of this are closed, so if you were planning that Yellowstone vacation, you might want to go back and reschedule. And that is what I have for news for the day. Let's throw the closing with some things that I like and some things that I hate. Get rid of this window entirely. And let's switch over to our closing window for the day. All right, as we start off on our close, we look at the rules of acquisition, as we always do. At the close of the show, we look at one of the rules of acquisition from the fictional Ferengi religion of capitalism, especially against other species. We look at the rules, we look and see what it is that they mean to the Ferengi in the show, the source material if applicable, and we also look and see if they can be applied in real life. Some of them cannot because Gene Roddenberry was an avowed communist, hated capitalism, and wanted to use these to mock those who are capitalistic. So let's see what it is that we have to say. One of my favorite ones, actually, the 9th rule of acquisition. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit. Part of the reason I'm sitting here right now. Opportunity plus instinct equals profit is fairly self-explanatory. This is from a DS9 episode, The Storyteller, which was a fantastic episode in the 4th season. Using it on the Ferengi, of course, and this is one that we can use in the same way in our real lives. An opportunity will present itself numerous times in your life. Sometimes you're not prepared for it. Sometimes you are fully prepared for it and you can do so. But more often than not, it just pops up and you many times don't know what to do. But if you've got the instinct, you see your ability to make profit. Then when the opportunity is there, you make the profit. It's not something necessarily that you're born with, it is something that you learn. Although instinct is your gut feeling, some of that is born with. But the ability to act and act appropriately in these situations are what give you your best profit. So, hone your skills, be prepared, of course, and know to jump and act because your opportunity will be there and it'll be a short window. And if you don't have the instinct to do so at the time, then you won't make the profit because someone else will beat you to it. Your rules of acquisition for the week of 7/23. Let's do a couple things I like and a couple things that I hate. Thing that I like, number one, this morning after finishing off Super Troopers on Hulu, the autoplay came through and I got to have a look at a movie that I have not seen since probably about 2004, but was still funny. This, of course, is a Mike Judge movie, which is not surprising given some of the cast and some of the writing off of this. This was pre-King of the Hill too, by the way. So this is like Beavis and Butthead era Mike Judge. Coming out and making a movie about, what else? Office work. So, the trailer for Office Space, looking at the idea where we're all expected to go back in and work in our cubicles and do data entry, and just, it doesn't fit for some of us. Like me, who would rather work around vehicles for most everything, even though I've been told that I should be working in a research grant or an office since I was probably about 8. Let's watch the trailer.
From Mike Judge, creator of Beavis and Butthead and co-creator of King of the Hill, comes a
Okay, take that back. This is not pre-King of the Hill. I thought that it was.
movie about people who go to work. Who are part of a team.
And remember, next Friday is Hawaiian Shirt Day.
Okay, if I could
set the building on fire.
Who respect their boss.
We need to talk about your flare.
Well, I have 15 pieces on.
15 is the minimum. Brian, for example, has 37 pieces of flare on today. And a terrific smile.
And need to escape.
I don't like my job, and I don't think I'm gonna go anymore.
One of these days, I just kick this piece of...
I'm thinking now it might be more fun to just get fired. And I've always wondered what that would take.
Oh, Peter, listen.
Well, it looks like you've been missing quite a bit of work lately.
Well, I wouldn't say I've been missing it, Bob.
That's just a straight shooter with upper management written all over him.
We're going to be getting rid of these people here. Mr. Samir. Okay. Not going to work here anymore anyway.
You haven't been showing up and you get to keep your job.
Actually, I'm being promoted. Thank you, Bob.
This is a suck!
They're gonna throw you out on the street so that Bill Lumberg's stock will go up. Ooh, it's completely unfair. Initech deserves to go down. We're just the guys to do it. Tell me about that virus you're always talking about. One that could rip off the company for a bunch of money.
I'm not going to do anything illegal, Peter.
Illegal? Samir, this is America. The worst they're gonna do is they put you in a white-collar minimum security resort for a couple of months. You know they have conjugal visits there?
I might be showing them my old face.
Oh.
They let you have sex with women?
They sure do.
Okay, I'll do it.
Office Space.
I know you've been getting pretty depressed about your job and everything, and so I just wanted to tell you, good things can happen in this world. I mean, look at me.
I'm thinking now it might be more fun to just get fired.
If you haven't seen it, take the time. It's good. Maybe it might inspire you to quit your job. Don't do that on my account. Do that on Mike Judge's account. And all on Mike Judge's account. But go check it out. Other things that I like this week. The memes. The memes from the Biden dropout. I chose just a couple of them. But they were good. Somebody actually did an AI video address of Biden. And I listened to it over the weekend. Well, my weekend, because I think I listened to it on Monday. It was hilarious enough that I wanted to share it with you. So let's have a listen to the president telling us about his decision to drop out.
My fellow Americans, I want to take a moment to address some of the hateful shit you've been talking about me. Many of you have said I am suffering from brain worms, or that I have applesauce for brains. Well, I won't mince words, so here it is. Fuck you. You're all a bunch of faggots. End of quote. Repeat the line. So enjoy President Cackles or President Booty Juice. I really don't give two fucks anymore. Biden out. My fellow Americans, I want to take a moment.
That's just one of the many ones that came off of this. And it's fantastic, by the way. No, I fixed the caps lock before I got started, remember? Former vice presidential candidate for the LP and current election spoiler for the state of Georgia, Spike Cohen, also getting in on this one. I don't really normally care for Spike, but this one was too good to ignore. It was following in the footsteps of one of those, my little child said something profoundly mature for the age of 4 years old. So here's why we should go and give our liberties all away to the Democratic Party. Spike Cohen. I told my 11-year-old daughter that Joe had dropped out, and she started to cry, and through her tears she asked, "So who will run now?" And I said, "Kamala." And then she shouted. But during her term as DA of San Francisco, Kamala knowingly used faulty evidence from a tainted drug lab to fraudulently convict over 1,000 defendants. We cannot allow what will be to be unburdened by what has been. I guess that's sage advice from an 11-year-old. Apparently that 11-year-old was Rondo Olivia, who I'm pretty sure is 30. So, but the meme remains, and the meme is still a good one as we go. Some more things that I like. The self-deprecating, which, I mean, anybody who's known me in person for more than 5 minutes knows that I'm very good at myself, so I can come back and appreciate this one. Trump takes a break during a Michigan rally to mock his own comb-over. Virginia Kruger from the Daily Wire reporting off that former President Trump took a brief moment at his Saturday rally to poke fun at his own comb-over, prompting laughter from the audience when he shrugged and said, "It looks okay from the other side." Let's listen.
You know, I have to just interject. If you would turn off those cameras, because I don't want this. See the screen up there of me? That's very severe, that comb over. That's a severe sucker. What's with that one? It looks okay from the other side. But that is very severe. I apologize. Man, I looked up there. I said, whoa. Look at that. Wow. That's like a work of art. Only look at that one. Don't look. That one looks.
We got botted over on the kick side. Now, you can take 5 minutes and think about it too. Yeah, who doesn't love a little bit of self-deprecation every once in a while? With a little bit of a wink and a nod. Some might say they do it too much, but... And the last one. We have one that actually did not get any mainstream attention. I just wanted to touch on it, though, for a moment here. Firearms Policy Coalition, with a lengthy thread. We'll read the first couple out of it. The Ninth Circuit has granted the government's en banc petition in a criminal case challenging the federal felon firearm ban. Judge Van Dyke writes a rare and scathing dissent, saying it's a fantasy to expect the Ninth Circuit to faithfully apply any of the Supreme Court's Second Amendment case law, and that the court is going to joyride Rahimi and the GPRs that followed it like a stolen Trans Am until the Supreme Court eventually corrects us again. Basically coming out and saying that they don't care about the Bruen decision. Which, I mean, everybody knew anyway, so I don't know why that's any sort of surprise. Van Dyke, the other 1729ths of our bench, is doing its best to avoid the court's guidance and subvert its approach to the Second Amendment that is patently obvious to anyone paying attention. To say it out loud is shocking only because judges rarely say such things out loud. For most of the judges in our circuit, any loss in a Second Amendment challenge at the Supreme Court is celebrated as a tool to further our artificial cabining of Bruen. But precisely because the supermajority of our court is so predictably biased against firearms, our en banc decision will once again speak volumes about the only Second Amendment inevitability in the Ninth Circuit. So, looks like there was a major win for case law against the Second Amendment, or for the Second Amendment, so good job on that. More people need to be armed. Now let's do a couple things that I hate and head out of here for the night. I did that one. I took care of it. Alright, first thing that I hate. No, this is the thing I like still. Hold that thought, we're going to one more thing that I like. From the Associated Press, Federal Appeals Court blocks remainder of Biden's student debt relief plan. From Annie Ma. A federal appeals court blocked the implementation of the Biden admin student debt relief plan, which would have lowered monthly payments for millions of borrowers. In a ruling on Thursday, the Eighth Circuit granted a motion for an admin stay filed by a group of Republican-led states seeking to invalidate the admin's entire student loan forgiveness program. The court's order prohibits the admin from implementing parts of the SAVE plan that were not already blocked by lower court rulings. The ruling comes the same day that Biden admin just announced another round of student loan forgiveness, this time totaling $1.2 billion in forgiveness for roughly 35,000 borrowers who are eligible for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. The PSLF, which provides relief for teachers, nurses, and firefighters and other public servants who make 120 qualifying monthly payments, was originally passed in 2007, but for years borrowers ran into strict rules and servicer errors that prevented them from having their debt canceled. The Biden admin adjusted some of the program's rules and retroactively gave many borrowers credits towards their required payments. So, I am not against student loan forgiveness in some forms. I think a lot of kids going up to my age were lied about or what it was that they were going to go to college for, and should have done more research in doing so. But under which, I don't think the taxpayers should be on the hook for it. The universities that lied to them should be on the hook for it. And I've long stressed that there is coming a point in the student loan fiasco where we actually need to do something. And I am 100% against forgiving any principal whatsoever anywhere. You signed on the dotted line, you took the money out, so pay it back. I have pointed out options where we let some of the interest go, forgive some of the interest, and reset some of the financial penalties, lowered credit scores, and things like that. So people, especially people who've gotten into better careers in their lives but still have that hanging over them, can go back and restructure, refinance, and put things into a different situation without the penalties on back. Maybe even roll it into a house, or a consolidation, or something that they don't have the options to with a 540 credit score because they haven't made any of their student loan payments. And hell, I've even said for the people who have paid it off with the interest there, give them a tax credit over 10 years. They'll come back and spend it. People like to spend. But as far as your principal goes, you signed on the line, pay it. We can work with the other stuff. I know some of my more conservative friends won't like that, but we can work with the other stuff. Alright, now for a couple things that I hate. Our Louisville thinks private schools should be illegal. A little bit of a Reddit post, and I am very much in favor of the private schools, of course. I have mixed feelings about the government programs to fund private schools through their students. I like the idea the money follows the student and gets them the education, of course. I don't like the fact that some of them will raise their tuition to keep up with the offset for it. But I also don't want the government to have the monopoly on educating people. I want them to have to work for the money, not just have it given for granted because they happen to be a government school. But from the subreddit, unpopular opinion here, I think that all private schools should be illegal. The money people put into tuition could go to fixing and improving JCPS for everybody. Yeah, but that's not your decision. That's their money to spend on it. Or invested into the communities. Also, if a governor wants to promote diversity in schools and society, there's no better way than to have kids of all socioeconomic backgrounds together in the same class, which is never what happens in public schooling. Nerdy Comfort says tax all the churches. Squantoon says I agree wholeheartedly. Mostly all they serve as a connection to jobs that you are underqualified for. Bog Diacoms, I had a friend who went to a Catholic private school, found out they were a Trump supporter. LOL, should have figured. Squantoon says the irony would be funny if it wasn't so damn depressing. And Bog Diacoms says found out from a Facebook post of all things. So, I mean, these two people's biggest problem with it is that it turns out Republicans. So, I don't think public schools should be illegal. I just think they should have to fight for the dollars just like everybody else does. That is part of the reason I'm in favor of the money following the student. Because if they want those taxpayer dollars, they'll have to improve their schools. But of course, I've got the mixed opinion of taxation and what it means for students as well. There's a lot. I'm not completely decided as to where I go with public versus private schools and the funding of them. I just know that our current system doesn't work. And the last one, Virginia City votes to sell $1.2 million property to Planned Parenthood for $10. From Luke Rosiak. Virginia's capital city this week voted to give Planned Parenthood a $1.2 million property for use as an abortion clinic. Critics say the city's gift of the property, which is situated just steps away from a middle school, could violate its own rules. The Richmond City Council agreed to sell the acre of land, which holds an abandoned public school building, to the Virginia League of Planned Parenthood for just $10. But as the Founding Freedoms Law Center Josh Hetzler observed in a July 19th letter to Richmond Mayor LeVar Stoney, a Democrat, the City Council did not follow the process for land sales as outlined in Richmond City Code on Section 8-58. The section states that the Council must first vote to declare the property in question surplus and then entertain competing bids. As the Council did neither of these things, the Planned Parenthood deal was unlawful, Hetzler said. And that's, of course, where I have the same problem with it. You can't just hold a private bid and give one of your donors, which Planned Parenthood is to the Democrat Party. Let's not sit back in here and pretend that this isn't the reason that this happened without somebody coming to be able to compete against it, even if it is public land. The community and everybody else has the same opportunity to that land as one of your biggest donors does. And this is part of the problem. You mean you can sit and argue your position on abortion, whether all illegal, all legal, up to 9 months after point of birth, after conception. You can sit and argue those points constantly until the end of time, and many of us will be. But the fact of the matter is a large donating member, which donates billions of dollars across all elections to Democrat candidates, was just offered a sweetheart deal for 0.00001% of market value for giving these donations back over. Fuck that. That is bullshit. And that's all I have for the day. Yeah, it's still humid in here. I can still see it over there. We got a lot done. Got a lot through. I didn't get through everything, unfortunately, but we did get a lot done, and I'm kind of excited for that. It was fun. See, I have the issue with not having at least a public option for the kids who can't even get into the private school or get kicked out of the private school. But I still want those public schools to compete to get the dollars. I understand there are situations where people can't always get into the private school. And this is coming from somebody who's against public school to begin with. Anyway, before I start a big debate, which is better served in the Discord, let's head out of here for the night. Where's my outro music? There it is. That is fucking loud. Alright, anyway, thanks so much everybody who came out and hung out with us and had a good time and a discussion. We had probably a few new lurkers and listeners off of this, so that was really awesome of you. I see the numbers starting to go up a little bit more as election season goes, so drop the follows, drop in if you like what you see, and tell some friends if you are here, and even if you just lurked. The replay of this will be available yet tonight on audio platform. Should be ready for the morning out on YouTube. The live stream will be privated immediately after finishing off. So a re-upload that is recorded locally will be available for you. So thanks again. Take care. Have a good night. Remember, we do video games on Wednesdays and Fridays on this channel, so come back and join me for that. Definitely looking forward to that. Diablo 2 into Act 5 tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Central. I think we're going to go to 7:30 actually, based on work schedule and the fact that I want to eat food after I get done with work. So come back in and join me for that. It'll be a great time. Follow it on Friday. Otherwise, we'll be back here on Tuesday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Given the events that unfolded in the last 48 hours, this is going to be interesting as we see who winds up actually being the nominee. I still think it's going to be Kamala, but I don't think she's going to be as popular as people think that she is. Take care. Have a fantastic night. Stick around if you're on Twitch for the raid, and we will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.